We were sort of standing on the side, and the son Joe Jr. was there, and pow, the shots came. And that was it.
What was the first thing you saw, actually?
I saw Colombo on the ground. That's what I saw. And then I heard that the shot's still coming. It must have been just like in a space of about 2 seconds. But all of a sudden you say to yourself, I'm still standing. And, then you start to run.
7 years ago, Joseph Colombo was gunned down at a rally of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, an organization he helped found. Since then, a reputed crime figure who was paralyzed from the waist down has been kept alive at St. Luke's Hospital in Newburgh. But even medical science could do just so much, and on Monday night, Joe Colombo died. He was buried today, and Aida Alvarez filed this report.
In the end, it was his family and neighborhood friends who stood by him. Joe Colombo was a product of Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, that Italian-American neighborhood where weekday bingo is as common as Sunday Mass. Having worshipped at St. Bernadette's Church most of his life, it was only fitting that his funeral services should be held there as well. The media was barred from attending the High Requiem Mass, so we stood outside with all the little people, the ones who'll remember him as the poor Italian boy who made it. Today, all those crime figures who once paid tribute to the chief were absent. Only his bodyguard and sons attended. His widow Louise and their children emerged from the church, dried-eyed but sad. It was ironic, but not surprising, that in death Colombo was hailed as a martyr. His notorious activities no doubt contributed to the image linking Italian Americans to the mafia. Yet today he was praised as a champion for Italian rights. Father Luis Giganti is chaplain of the Italian American Civil Rights League, founded by Colombo. It was he who delivered the eulogy.
If you look at his record, he was only arrested for shooting crap when he was 18 years old. Every other indictment, every other accusation came after he became a civil rights leader. And that was another indication on how the media, particularly, champion what law enforcement often gives them. Joe Colombo has left his mark in American society.
Joe Colombo's funeral procession was a modest one for a reputed gangland leader. 10 vehicles, including 3 floral cars, made up the entire procession. His body was taken to St. John's Cemetery in Queens. This is Aida Alvarez, Channel 5 News.
Meantime, there was another mystery to unravel at Coney Island Hospital.
At about 8:50 this morning, one James Malpizzo, he's shot once in the chest. His father is Louis Malpizzo of the same address, reputed to be a Colombo soldier.
Before today, the mob-related violence of the past 3 weeks had claimed 5 lives. Last Thursday, Rosario Nastasi was killed and his girlfriend was wounded inside this Bay Ridge social club. And on Friday, reputed Colombo associate Vincent Fusaro was shot and killed as he strung Christmas lights outside his Bensonhurst home. The deputy chief believes a serious conflict within the Colombo crime family may be behind the bloodshed.
We think these are lower-level people, possibly working without guidance, just kind of choosing up sides and deciding to do as much damage as they can to the other side.
This apparent war in the Colombo family comes just weeks after reports of a plot to rub out John Gotti, the reputed head of the Gambino family.
The lead is flying and the victims are falling. It looks like New York has a mob war on its hands. Brenda Blackman is in our newsroom now to tell us about the latest casualties. Brenda?
Sarah Lee, this mob war is basically all in the family, the Colombo crime family. But one of the latest victims was a teenager who worked at a store owned by 2 alleged Colombo figures and who received a deadly message for them.
The bagel shop is owned by people who do have a criminal record and who are reputed to have some organized crime ties.
17-year-old Mateo Speranza was working behind the counter when a man entered the shop and shot Speranza 6 times, once in the head. Police say the teen had no criminal record. He died at Lutheran Hospital. Meantime, there was another mystery to unravel at Coney Island Hospital.
One James Malpizzo, he's shot once in the chest. His father is Louis Malpizzo of the same address, reputed to be a Colombo soldier.
Before today, the mob-related violence of the past 3 weeks had claimed 5 lives. Last Thursday, Rosario Nastasi was killed and his girlfriend was wounded inside this Bay Ridge social club. And on Friday, reputed Colombo associate Vincent Fusaro was shot and killed as he strung Christmas lights outside his Bensonhurst home. The deputy chief believes a serious conflict within the Colombo crime family may be behind the bloodshed.
We think these are lower-level people, possibly working without guidance, just kind of choosing up sides and deciding to do as much damage as they can to the other side.
The serious conflict in the Colombo family is apparently over who's the boss. Some lawmen say alleged boss Carmine Percio wants his son Alfonso to take over, but the alleged acting boss Vic Arena doesn't want to give up power. Sarah?
Thank you, Brenda.
28 of the first 41 members of the Colombo crime family served with grand jury subpoenas showed up at Brooklyn Supreme Court to answer Brooklyn DA Joe Hines' summons. The mood of those invited to Mr. Hines' get-together was best summed up by this participant. The defense attorneys who accompanied the accused mobsters also belittled the idea of summoning their clients to a grand jury, since they claimed Hines knew the wise guys would get immunity if they actually testified before the grand jury.
It's absolute showboating. He's not going to give anybody immunity. He wouldn't dare give them immunity. And what are we here for? Just to bring out the TV cameras and to get his name in the paper?
So what was the point of this exercise? Well, in the words of the Brooklyn streets, you might say the DA was busting chops.
There's a war going on, there's no question about it. And you're right, innocent people are being shot because I guess they're having trouble shooting straight. That's nothing new to the Colombo mob. But we're not going to tolerate Brooklyn becoming a shooting gallery.
So, having to go before the cameras were the likes of Bill Willie Fingers Cotolo, a former underboss, now a capo. He's the gent in the shades and brown coat. With him in the black leather trench is Bobby D'Onofrio. Joining them in the red plaid coat and gray hat with the collar up to cover his face is Nicky Black Grancia. His nephew Joseph Tolino was shot December 3rd. As Cotolo's group swells to 7 wise guys walking, the guy in back of Nicky Black in the blue and white jacket and black cap is Ralph Piccirillo. Inside, they would join fellows like Vinny Casio on the left and Benny LoCicero on the right. But law enforcement's crackdown on the Colombos took a different turn later in the day when detectives from NYPD's Organized Crime Bureau rounded up 3 guys, each carrying a 9mm and walkie-talkies. Immediately, they were grilled regarding the shootings that have marked the Colombo War. Pablo Guzman, Fox News, New York.
It's a scene all too familiar to the cops, an obvious cold-blooded hit. This time, the bodies of 2 men were found murdered in a Bonneville at Bay 7th Street and Cropsey Avenue in Bath Beach, Brooklyn. 42-year-old Vincent DePeppo and his 21-year-old nephew Neil Nasto were both shot in the head at point-blank range. Now the cops have to sort out exactly who killed the men and why. Here at the FBI, an investigation is ongoing. But how serious is this investigation?
The FBI at this time is not ready to say this was part of the Colombo War or a gang hit. It could have been part of a war. It could have been simply a drug deal gone bad, or it could have been payback for a past wrong.
If the cops find out DePeppo and Nasto were associates in the Colombo crime family, it brings the number of Colombo mob-related hits in the past year to 13. How do you investigate something like this? I mean, who's going to give anything up?
To find out what really happened here, we'll have to go to our intelligence base, which means talking to sources and informants and people who may have just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
A spokesperson for the Brooklyn DA's office wouldn't disclose whether DePeppo and Nasto were among the 100 mob figures called to testify before a grand jury investigating all the Colombo hits. Police say the war is a power struggle between rival factions in the Colombo family. They believe it's between those loyal to acting boss Victor Little Vic Arena and those loyal to Carmine Jr. Persico, the imprisoned boss. He wants his son Alphonse, who is also in jail, to take over the family. The family feud apparently began a year ago when Persico soldier Hank the Bank Smura was shot dead in Sheepshead Bay. In 7 months, until the end of May, 9 bodies were found riddled with bullets. Everyone thought the war was over. But just a couple of weeks ago, the decomposed body of Persico ally Stephen Lightning Mancusi was found in a car in Brooklyn. So, are the feds optimistic they'll have an answer on whether or not these latest 2 killings are related to the Colombo family?
We've got a very strong, a very substantial intelligence base, so we think within a few days we'll know what was involved here.
I'm Penny Crone, Fox News.
I heard the gunshots, then I came up. I was watching the ball game downstairs. So.
Charlie Granger is one of dozens of people who heard the shots but didn't see anything else. The cops say it was a classic mob rub-out. When the smoke cleared, 47-year-old Joseph Scopo desperately staggered across 110th Street, then fell to the ground, leaving in his trail blood-stained change from his pocket.
Scopo was shot twice in the stomach and once in the left side of his chest.
Organized crime was part of Scopo's life. He lived with it and he died with it. The reputed Colombo street boss was sitting in a car in front of his house. He was with his 25-year-old nephew, Dominic Lagozo, and his future son-in-law, 27-year-old Angelo Barone. Lagozo was shot in the arm. Barone wasn't hurt. Clearly, one of the big questions in this case is how did the two men in the car with Scopo manage to get away alive? There were 24 bullets fired. Police want to know exactly what their story is. Do you think that by any chance they set Scopo up?
There's nothing to indicate that.
Scopo lived at this house in Richmond Hill for only 3 weeks. Today, family members came and went. It was obvious they were trying to reckon with Joseph's death. And from the time he moved in, what was he like?
He was very friendly, nice guy. He's always well dressed.
Scopo was the son of racketeer Ralph Scopo. In 1987, he and other Colombo bosses were convicted of heading up murder and extortion plots. The senior Scopo was given more than 100 years behind bars. He died there.
And my client gets 100 years for a payoff case. He may deserve a few years in jail, but not 100 years.
It's believed this latest hit was done within the Colombo crime family. Scopo reportedly was acting street boss of the family. Colombo godfather Vic Arena is behind bars and reportedly calling the shots from there. His imprisonment has led to a war for power on the streets. In the last couple of years, more than a dozen people have been gunned down.
Well, what's happening now in the mob, in all families, is a disintegration and this factionalization and disputes, particularly in the Colombo family, which has been going on for some time now. There has been internecine warfare.
Now the cops have their work cut out for them. Obviously, no one who really saw anything would admit to it. But what about the two men in the car?
Well, the two men that were in the car, now they're pretty good witnesses. What have they told you about what happened?
At this point, still under investigation.
What does that mean?
We're still investigating it.
I mean, have they been able to make any statements? One of them was unharmed.
At this point, no.
I'm Penny Crone, Fox News.
There's nothing to indicate.
And while the Gotti deliberations continue, the feds say that they have busted another mobster. Brenda Blackman is here now with that story.
Rollin, it's one of the biggest blows yet to the Cosa Nostra. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn reports more informants than ever are coming forth to put the mob away.
Today's indictment marks the fourth leader of four major crime families in the city that are under indictment in this district.
Victor Little Vic Oreno, the alleged acting boss of the 100-member Colombo family, is charged with racketeering murder. Investigators say he had someone in his organization killed so he could get a better job. His arrest came this morning in Valley Stream, Long Island.
At the time of the arrest, 12 firearms were recovered, including 4 shotguns, 4 9mm automatics, and 2 Mossberg assault rifles. All were loaded and ready for use.
Police say for several months, the Colombo family has been in a civil war after Oreno allegedly tried to gain control from Carmine Jr. Persico, now serving a life sentence for racketeering. Maloney said a former mobster-turned-government witness helped lead authorities to the arrest of Oreno and the surrender of a mob soldier. Both have pleaded not guilty.
Obviously, the Cosa Nostra is not going to go out of business tomorrow. But I've been saying this repeatedly. I think if this effort keeps up by the FBI and other federal prosecutors, I think 10 years from now, they could all be reduced.
During the arraignment, authorities announced they had confidential information that the lives of both suspects were in danger. Oreno's attorney responded that information was apparently shared for the benefit of the press.
All right, thank you, Brenda.